My name is Johan Erasmus. I'm a bit of an intruder into this Reformed circle, and I think it's very strategic that I'm here. It's so that if you have a complaint and you want to take this to the church body, then the GTV, Jock, and everybody's got deniability and say, no, it was Johan. It wasn't us. So I'm a bystander in this conversation, and it's a massive privilege to be a bystander in this conversation, because this is not happening in any of the churches that I know, and I'm in this race facilitation thing. So this is very unique, and you guys are a little bit of guinea pigs. So let's assume, if worst case scenario, there's a massive shortage in gereformeerde reverence after this thing, then we know we might have to revisit it. Let me just say one or two things. I know that there's been a lot of theological stuff, but this is a theological society, so I guess I can get on that bandwagon. I want to give you just a heads up, and the heads up is this. You're probably not going to like this the next 2 days. If you like it, there's more than likely something wrong with you, or secondly, you didn't understand what the other people said. So one of those two scenarios. So chances are you won't like it, but chances are that you will grow through this thing. And I've noticed that when we only tap each other on the back and we agree with each other, that's when we do not necessarily grow. That's an echo room, where what we already know and perceive is just echoed back to us. But when there's resistance, and I say this in the best theological sense, that's when we grow. So let me just make one or two statements. Can I ask you a very naughty question? Who here thinks white people are being marginalized in this country, politically, or one way or the other? Just by way of hands. All right, we've got a couple. Who here thinks black people are being marginalized in this country, one way or the other? Just a couple of hands. All right, there we go. Skulk, let's pretend you're Indian, okay? You've got a bit of an Indian flavor, actually. So who here thinks Indian people are victimized in this country? Hands up. Okay, thank you, Skulk. And let's assume, Martin, you're a colored person, and I ask this question, who you think that the colored population in this country is marginalized? Hands up. Martin, you're a colored, not a very good one at the moment, but your hand is up as well. Now that is amazing, that in this country, we are not a country of citizens, we're a country of victims. Okay, that's quite unique, that everybody considers themselves one way or the other a victim, politically, economically, socially, on that spectrum. And that is very strange. One thing that I've noticed, though, is that this is not unique to South Africa. If you go to Europe, then the white Europeans will tell you that they are being marginalized, they're being victimized by the refugees coming in and the radical Islam coming in. If you ask the Muslims, they will tell you exactly the same. They are being marginalized. If you ask the women, if you ask the refugees, they'll tell you exactly the same. One of the funnest things that I can do, and I think it's your theological obligation as pastors, is to watch the American politics system, the Republicans versus the Democrats. It's absolutely hilarious, but it is, again, a competition for who's the biggest victim, right? The Republicans try to say we are being victimized in this way, and the Democrats try to say we are being victimized in this way. And it's become a commodity. Who's the biggest victim? And we fight for that honor. Now, with that said, there's a couple of reasons why this is happening in the world. And there's a couple of reasons why this is happening right now. One of them has to do with the fact that social media has come to the fore. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard in technological terms, sorry if this is going too long, Jock, but just bear with it. If you've heard in technological terms a thing called an echo chamber. So if you go on Amazon and you buy a book, have you noticed that they give you an option at the bottom that says, people who bought this book also bought this? Have you seen that? And when you go on YouTube, they say, you might also like this. Have you seen that? They've created an algorithm, Google, Facebook, all of these guys, to try and sell you stuff, or to try and sell you ideas. And it means that if you like a specific thing, for instance, solidariteit, then somebody in the technology world picks it up, and they say, you might also like this. here's a little bit of a clip of Ben Shapiro, which is, let's say, more right-wing ideas, and I'm not using it in a negative sense, from America. And you might also like this, and then before you know it, you're listening to Steve Hofmeyr. Or you might also like this. This is just a stereotype. Don't write that down. But it means that you are being force-fed the same ideas by technology, by an algorithm. And it happens the other way around as well. If you are passionate about roads must fall, guess what? Google or your computer is going to give you another option. Black Lives Matter. You're going to hear some ideas from Eusebius Makaiser. You're going to look at Malema clips. It's going to feed you the same ideas. And here's the thing. You are never confronted with other perspectives. And then when you encounter it in the media, you think to yourself, how is this possible? How can you be such an intolerant, bigot, racist, communist, capitalist thing? We can't even imagine that people can hold to those views. And it's because we've just heard the same ideas echoed back to us for the longest period. And that's why an opportunity like this is important. We're switching off our technological devices. And we're saying, instead of just being in this echo room, we invite the other perspective into the room. Is everybody clear with that? That's what we try to do, and that's why it's very necessary in our country. People are very self-righteous. When Mfundisi Kwenya shared his message this morning, you heard self-righteousness from the Jews in Jesus' day. Said, we don't sin. We're not slaves. We don't have a problem like that. And you know what? Every population group says that. The problem is not us. The Jews would have said the problem is the Romans. We would have said, this group over here would probably say the problem is the ANC. That group over there would probably say, no, the problem is white monopoly capital. The problem is always external, right? It's never us. But that's not the gospel. And that's what makes Jesus a very unfortunate companion in this thing. If you want to continue with the blame-shifting thing, by all means, just drop the whole Christianity thing. But if you try to be a follower of Jesus, he says, first take the log out of your own eye, my brother. And remember, they were all liberation theologians. They were all convinced that the number one problem in the world is the Romans. And they come to Jesus to test his theology. And he says, you know what, we can figure that out. I think they're a problem. But first, let's deal with this log. And that's what we're going to try and do today. We're going to try and deal with the log. We had Prof. Koos Forster and a lot of intelligent people with titles. So I thought maybe I must just quote intelligent people to drive my point home. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, you might be familiar with him. He was a Russian activist writer. He writes the problem like this, and I think this is what a Christian justice is all about. He says, if only it were so simple, if only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? We're going to do some serious introspection here today. G.K. Chesterton, another famous writer, ironically a Catholic. I thought I had to bring a Catholic here in the Reformation thing. A journalist once asked, what is the problem with the world? And Chesterton wrote back and he said, Dear Mr. Editor, regarding your question, what is wrong with the world? I am, sincerely yours, G.K. Chesterton. I am the problem with the world. My last quote is Miroslav Volf. He's a guy who writes in political theology. He writes this, and I think this is so true for our country and for this room. Forgiveness fails because I exclude the enemy from the realm of saints, even as I exclude myself from the community of sinners. But no one can be in the presence of the crucified Messiah for long without overcoming this double exclusion, without transposing the enemy from shared humanity and herself from the sphere of proud innocence to the sphere of common sinfulness. That's what we're going to try and do today. So, without keeping you too long, I want to invite you to try and listen. I know that we can blog and we can tweet and we can share and we can post these days. Don't do that. Try and listen. And before I got married, which was a year or so ago, we went to this, a counselor. And the guy said, first seek to understand before trying to be understood. And that really helped us. So we're still married, and maybe that helped us to try and understand before seeking to be understood. And when we have our fights, and I know a lot of you guys will identify with this without admitting it, but when you fight and your wife or your spouse or whatever is making the not your wife and your spouse, they're usually the same thing, but let's say you're fighting with them. I've often said, "Oh, you finished now? Are you finished now? Are you finished? Can I respond?" And the thing is, I've already worked out my response way before she's finished. I mean, "Are you finished? Okay, let me respond. Let me tell you what's the problem." I'm not listening. I'm not trying to understand. I'm trying to be understood. And we're going to drop that, and we're going to try and understand before we seek to be understood. The last point I want to make is this. You don't have to agree with everything that's being said today, but at least try and understand it. Can you see that there's a difference? You don't have to agree with everything, but at least disagree with something that you truly understand, not just a straw man of what you think this person is saying. You guys are a bunch of reformed people. You've got serious dogmatic buttons. And it means that if somebody says something that triggers something and you immediately have your response, I want you to delay that response intentionally. Stay engaged in the conversation and try and understand the opposing perspective. That's my sermon. I'm sorry, I know you guys are used to doing it, not receiving it. So without further ado, I want